Hello YouTube. In this video I want to take a look at a game which I played against the same opponent as my previous video, and we had the same opening, a Philidor, and here I played f5, which is not a very good move. There are apparently 4 different moves that refute this opening, so this is an opening that I only play over the board because I know that my opponent isn't going to have access to a database or an engine. My opponent played knight c3, and here bishop g5 loses some of the advantage. The engine prefers taking on e5, and after knight takes, bishop c4. And here I took the pawn, and after knight takes, I took on the other pawn. The computer gives this move an exclamation mark, which I'm not sure why, because it looks like the most obvious move in the position. If you don't, I'm not sure what else you'll play. If you play anything else, you could try playing pawn to d5. So here I went bishop e7, and my opponent played a seemingly logical move, but it loses a big portion of the advantage. Queen f3. The engine prefers taking on f6, and after bishop takes, bishop c4, which stops black from castling, develops a piece. So after queen f3, I just castled, and now my opponent captured with a knight. And after bishop takes, I spent a couple of minutes thinking about this position, because I thought that queen e8 was a very clever move. The point is that this bishop's gonna come to c4 with check, gaining a tempo after the king moves, say, to h8, because you don't really want to block it. And, well, if you go queen e8, you don't really want to go back with the knight and blocking with the queen. Well, that just kind of alleviates all the pressure that white has. So bishop e2, well, the bishop is not as well placed on e2 as it is on c4, and you obviously cannot castle in this position, even though you would like to. So after bishop e2, I took on f6, and here my opponent played queen d3. I don't think I played this game particularly well. I think my opponent just made a series of inaccurate moves, and as you can see, the engine already prefers black slightly. So I think the position is roughly equal, although I think Rybka likes this move, queen d5 check, and after king h8, castles c6. But queen d3 is not terrible. And here I made a move which is not the top 3. It's, I think, a pretty bad move. The reason I played it is because, well, it's a blitz game, so my opponent doesn't have a lot of time to think, and this knight is very well centralized. But by playing c5, I am creating this weakness on d6. But because it's a blitz game, I figured it's going to be more difficult for my opponent to take advantage of that weakness. Fortunately for me, my opponent played knight f3. Had he played knight b5, I don't think I would have done so well in the game. This is a really good move, and it's not so obvious how you're gonna defend the pawn, because the idea is, well, you're gonna castle queenside, and with a rook on the d file, you're gonna be putting a lot of pressure on the pawn. So if you go something like queen e7, castles, knight c6, you cannot take immediately. What you want to do is put the rook on the e file, because if you take immediately, then you can just take, and after queen takes, you take the bishop. Although I think white is doing really well in this position. If you can put the other rook here, you have potential checkmating ideas. This pawn is hanging, this rook is undeveloped, this bishop needs somewhere to go, but I mean, right now f5 is really the only good square. But instead my opponent went back with the knight, and after knight c6 my opponent castled. I think castling queenside would have been better. Then he can push the pawns, but it's very double-edged. And after bishop f5, I missed this move, queen b3 check, although it's actually not as bad as it looks. But here my opponent played a move which I just don't really understand. Bishop e5. I mean, do you really want to take the knight? In this position, looking at it from white's perspective, I probably would have played this move, rook a e1. But here, I just went queen h5, and I am looking to play either rook h6 or rook g6, and potential ideas of putting the bishop on h3 if the rook is on the g file. And here my opponent decided to take the knight, and after pawn takes, queen b7, and this is a blunder. Black already had a slight advantage before this move, but after this move, it's a pretty significant advantage. Again, rook a1, probably the best move. And here I just double on the f file, which the engine approves. And here my opponent got super greedy with queen takes, and now I think this should be pretty much losing for white. I played bishop g4, which is a really good move. The engines give it an exclamation mark. Now, I guess I got lucky because I was also thinking of playing either rook g6 or rook h6, but if rook h6 immediately, there is a way to save the position. Now, when I was thinking about it during the game, I thought if you play h3, then we just transpose into the game, but pawn to h4, and even though black is much better, there is no immediate checkmate. I mean, you can play rook g6, but there's still no checkmate. You just have some pressure. But after bishop g4, my opponent played this move, knight d2, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But now I just went rook h6 with the obvious threat of mate, and after h3, well, I just sacrificed the bishop. And here my opponent resigned after a long think. I mean, it's a blitz game. It was a 10-minute game with a 5-second delay, so I could understand why he didn't want to try to flag me, but there is something to be said for taking, and after queen takes, queen g2 the only move, and after rook g6 you can trade, and well, black is obviously better, but I don't think it's that bad from a practical point of view, especially because it's a blitz game. I mean, you have these double isolated pawns, and well, if you can find a good square for the knight and you can activate this rook without getting mated, I think you're doing well. But well, I guess first you have to stop rook f5, because well, rook g5 would be mate, so you have to, I don't know, go something like f4, but apparently that loses in 4 moves. So I don't know, maybe my opponent calculated this whole thing out and so that there is no way to survive this attack. Anyway, I hope that you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.